4 astronauts, 1 rocket, and a secret nobody in that press conference will say out loud. Next week, for the first time in over 50 years, human beings are leaving Earth orbit. And what they're actually going after is not what NASA told you. Before we get into it, quick question. Where in the world are you watching this right now? Drop it in the comments. I'm genuinely curious, because here's what I need you to understand before anything else. The most important space mission in half a century is being sold to you as exploration, as science, as inspiration for the next generation. And those things aren't lies, but they are cover. The real reason we're going back to the moon next week involves a resource so strategically valuable that multiple superpowers are quietly racing to control it right now. And whoever gets there first doesn't just win a space trophy. They gain structural control over the entire economic future of humanity beyond Earth for the next 100 years. I'm going to show you exactly what that resource is, why it matters more than oil ever did, and why the timing of this mission is not a coincidence. But here's my promise to you, the most shocking part of this story, the part that will completely change how you see everything happening in space right now, that comes at the very end. So stay with me, because the last 60 seconds of this video will reframe everything. Let's start from the beginning. The year is 1972, December. A man named Gene Cernan climbs back into a lunar module on the surface of the moon, takes one last look around, and steps inside. That was the last time a human being stood on another world, over 50 years ago. Think about that. We've built the internet, we've mapped the human genome, we've put supercomputers in everyone's pocket, and in all that time, not one human being has traveled beyond low Earth orbit. Not once. So when NASA announced Artemis II, a mission that will carry 4 astronauts farther from Earth than any human has traveled since that December day in 1972, the obvious question is, why now? The official answer is science, exploration, a stepping stone to Mars. And yes, the mission is real, the rocket is real, the crew is real. They will fly around the moon and come home. But here's the detail almost every news article skips right over. Artemis II doesn't land on the moon. It flies around it, swings past on a carefully calculated arc, and comes home. No moonwalk, no footage of boots touching dust. For a mission that's been described as humanity's grand return to deep space, that sounds almost underwhelming, unless you understand what it's actually proving. Because this mission isn't about the moon, it's about what comes after the moon. And what comes after depends entirely on one thing working perfectly. The spacecraft, the life support, the heat shield, the systems that keep 4 human beings alive 250,000 miles from home. If those systems work, the door opens. And what's on the other side of that door is worth more than anything humanity has ever competed over before. Now here's where it gets interesting. At the south pole of the moon, sitting inside craters so cold they make the surface of Pluto feel warm, there is something that has been frozen there for billions of years, completely untouched, preserved since before complex life existed on Earth. It's not gold, it's not rare minerals, it's water. And before you think, okay, water, so astronauts can drink it, stop. Because that is not even close to why every major space power on Earth is quietly obsessing over it right now.
Water is H2O. 2 hydrogen atoms, 1 oxygen atom. Run electricity through it, split those molecules apart, cool them down to cryogenic temperatures, and you have liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen. The same propellants that powered the space shuttle's main engines, some of the most efficient rocket fuel that physics allows. Now here's the part that changes everything. Getting anything off the surface of Earth and into space is extraordinarily expensive because Earth's gravity is brutal. To escape it, you need to travel at over 40,000 kilometers per hour, and the fuel required to do that makes up the vast majority of a rocket's entire mass at launch. Every deep space mission, Mars, the asteroid belt, anywhere interesting, requires enormous amounts of propellant. And right now, every kilogram of that propellant has to be dragged up from the bottom of Earth's gravity well at enormous cost. But the Moon's gravity is 1/6 of Earth's. Escaping the lunar surface takes a tiny fraction of the energy. If you can mine water ice at the South Pole, split it into fuel, and store it at a depot in lunar orbit, then spacecraft don't have to carry their return fuel from Earth anymore. They top up at the Moon. That's not a minor efficiency gain. That is a complete restructuring of the economics of space travel. It's the difference between every mission being a once-in-a-decade, budget-consuming event and space travel starting to function like an actual transportation network. The Moon is not the destination. The Moon is the gas station, and the South Pole is where the gas is buried. This is why the Artemis program exists. Not for science, not for flags, for infrastructure, for the supply chain of the solar system. And this is why Artemis 2, a mission that doesn't even land, is the most important spaceflight in 50 years. Because without proving the hardware works, without proving humans can survive the journey and come back alive, none of what comes next is possible. But there's a problem, a serious one. America is not the only country that knows this. China's lunar program has been methodical, patient, and successful. In 2019, they landed on the far side of the Moon, something no one had ever done before. In 2020, they returned samples from the lunar surface, the first mission to do that since 1976, and they have publicly stated their intention to land astronauts on the Moon around 2030, specifically targeting the South Pole, the same ice, the same geography that makes a permanent lunar base possible. And here is the uncomfortable truth that nobody at a NASA press conference will say directly. The optimal landing sites at the South Pole, the ridges with near-constant sunlight right next to the craters full of ice, are limited. There aren't dozens of perfect locations. There are a handful, maybe fewer. Whoever builds infrastructure there creates a physical reality that is extremely difficult to displace, not because of law, because of physics. If you've already built a processing facility at the best site, there is no equally good site right next door. You don't have to claim territory to control a resource. You just have to get there first and build something that works. That is the race that is actually happening right now. Quiet, technical, buried in mission planning documents and budget briefings, but real. And Artemis 2 is the opening move. Here is the part I promised you, the thing that reframes everything. 50 years of silence in deep space exploration wasn't accidental. It wasn't a pause. It was collapse. After Apollo, the political will evaporated. The crisis that created the moon race, the fear that the Soviet Union would get there first and demonstrate the superiority of their system, that crisis ended when we won. And when the crisis ended, the program ended with it. The Saturn V production line shut down. The engineers scattered. The institutional knowledge dissolved across decades, until what remained was blueprints without memory, documents without the people who understood why every decision was made. Rebuilding deep space capability is not like resuming something you paused. It is like reconstructing a language when most of the native speakers are gone. That is what NASA has spent years doing with Artemis, and now that reconstruction is about to be tested for the first time, with human lives depending on it. But here's the real reveal. The people who built the Artemis program weren't just building a rocket. They were building a political structure specifically designed to survive the forces that killed every previous attempt. International partnerships, Canada, Europe, Japan, Australia, 40-plus nations, not just for cooperation, but to make cancellation a diplomatic crisis, not a budget line item. Industrial contracts distributed across congressional districts in dozens of states, not for efficiency, but to make cancellation politically expensive in the specific way that matters to the people who control funding. The Artemis Accords, a framework of agreements that over 40 nations have signed, establishing the rules for how lunar resources can be accessed, designed to make the American approach the default architecture before any competing framework gets deep enough roots to challenge it. This mission was engineered to be too entangled to kill.
Because the people who designed it understood something that most of the public conversation misses entirely. Technical excellence does not protect a space program. Political gravity does. And you build political gravity by making your program load-bearing for enough people that stopping it costs more than continuing. That is the real mission of Artemis 2. Not the trajectory around the moon, not the heat shield test, not even the validation of the life support systems. The real mission is to cross the threshold from promise to achievement. Because promises get canceled, achievements get built upon. Every space program that came before this one lived and died as a promise. Apollo 20 was canceled. Constellation was canceled. Decades of momentum, billions of dollars, extraordinary human effort, canceled because the political appetite ran out before the infrastructure got built. Artemis 2 is the moment this program either becomes too real to stop or reveals itself as one more chapter in the long, quiet history of things we almost did. 4 astronauts, 1 rocket, 10 days. And sitting at the end of it, not the moon, but the question of whether this time we actually mean it. The water is frozen in those craters right now. It has been there for billions of years, patient, waiting. The question is whether we get there before someone else does, and whether, if we do, we're actually prepared to build what we keep saying we're going to build. Next week, we take one step toward finding out. Whether you believe this is about science or about resources or about the long, slow opening move of a competition that will define who controls the economics of deep space for the next century, you're not wrong. It's all of those things at the same time. And it starts next week. So the next time someone tells you we're going back to the moon for science, remember what's actually buried in those craters. Remember the gas station that nobody's built yet. Remember the 2 programs racing toward the same handful of optimal landing sites on a body with no legal framework to resolve competing claims. And remember that the most important space mission in 50 years is being described to you as an exciting first step. It is that, and it is so much more than that. Drop a comment below. Do you think we're going to win this race, or is the window already closing? Because the answer to that question matters more than almost anything else happening in the world right now, and most people have no idea it's even a race.